Welcome back, focused learners, to another explainer. We're jumping right in today because we have a massive, incredibly fascinating journey ahead of us. We are diving deep into the backbone of our entire digital world. Now, our roadmap for today comes straight from Chapter 5 of a fantastic 15-part tutorial called Modern Telecommunications, which is put together by Virtualization Options LLC, which is a really well-respected technology research, education, and advisory group out of Colorado. Today, we're zeroing in on just Chapter 5, tracing the complete evolutionary arc of modern telecom. We're talking everything from Samuel Morse's literal 1840s copper wire telegraphs all the way up to tomorrow's AI-driven terahertz frequency 6G networks. It's just an unbelievable story of human engineering. But before we really get going on the timeline, I want you to just pause and marvel at the sheer, invisible scale of global telecommunications right now. Think about it. We have billions of devices, phones, hyperscale servers, cars, IoT sensors, and they are all transmitting voice and data through the exact same airwaves and the exact same underground fiber cables, literally at the exact same time. So how on earth do we share the exact same medium among billions of users without causing total catastrophic interference? Well, that is the ultimate puzzle that engineers have been solving and, frankly, resolving for over a century. Okay, here is how we're going to break this down today. First, we'll cover the foundations of connectivity. Second, the digital network revolution. Third, packet switching and VoIP. Fourth, mobile and optical leaps. And finally, we'll wrap up with cloud, AI, and tomorrow. All right, Section 1, Foundations of Connectivity, the 3-layer deep dive. If you really want to grasp telecom history, the key takeaway is that every single generation of technology had to solve a very specific bottleneck of its era. To make sense of all this incredibly complex infrastructure, it really helps to use a clean mental model. Honestly, whether we are talking about a 19th century telegraph or today's modern fiber optic backbone, telecom infrastructure can always be understood through a simple 3-layer hierarchy. Down at the base, you've got the physical layer. This is the raw stuff, the transmission medium itself, like cables, antennas, and amplifiers. Sitting right above that is the logical layer. This is where protocols and switching give structure and traffic direction to the data flowing through the physical medium. And finally, up at the top is the application layer. That's where the actual user-facing services live, things like your voice calls, video streams, and web browsing. So let's go back to our core question. How do we share that medium? This brings us to a foundational piece of telecom jargon you need to know: multiplexing. Multiplexing is simply the technique that allows multiple users to share one single medium. Early on, the solution was frequency division multiplexing, or FDM. You can think of this exactly like broadcast radio. Every channel gets a unique, dedicated band of frequencies, so they just don't overlap. Then engineers developed time division multiplexing, TDM, which instead gives each channel a fast repeating time slot in a shared digital stream. And ultimately, we got statistical multiplexing, which allocates bandwidth dynamically based on actual traffic demand. That, by the way, is exactly how modern internet packets flow today. Now think about the ratio 20:1. It's a massive number, and it represents how statistical multiplexing works in the real world. It relies heavily on a concept that is a lot like airline overbooking. Internet service providers routinely oversubscribe their access links by ratios of 20:1, sometimes even more. They're literally selling more capacity than physically exists on the wire. They're making a bet on the statistical improbability that everyone is going to transmit at their maximum peak at the exact same millisecond. Usually, this works flawlessly. But when those usage assumptions break down, say when the entire globe suddenly shifted to remote work during the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic, well, that's when you see rapid system-wide network congestion. Moving right along to Section 2, the digital network revolution, overcoming analog noise. As we push our timeline forward into the 1970s and 1980s, engineers hit a massive new bottleneck, and that was analog signal degradation over long-distance telephone lines. The difference here is absolutely night and day. In the old analog systems, every single amplifier in a long chain across the country didn't just boost the voice signal, it also amplified all the accumulated background static. It was like a giant game of telephone. The longer the distance, the worse the call sounded. Digital transmission fundamentally fixed this entirely. Because a digital receiver only has to distinguish between two simple states, a 1 or a 0, the signal can be perfectly regenerated, perfectly crisp at each and every repeater. Zero noise is accumulated, and that is exactly why digital transmission became absolutely superior for long-haul networks. To actually make that digital jump, engineers relied on the Nyquist-Shannon sampling theorem, which leads us to a magic number in telecom, 64 kilobits per second. To accurately capture the human voice, which generally sits between 300 and 3400 hertz, engineers figured out they needed to sample it 8,000 times every single second, translating each of those samples into 8 bits of data. Do the math. 8,000 times 8 equals 64,000 bits per second. That 64 kilobits PS channel became the literal foundational building block for digital telephony across the entire globe. Once you have a 64 kilobit channel, you can't just send one at a time over a huge cable. You need to bundle them for efficiency, using that time division multiplexing we talked about earlier. In North America, engineers created the classic T1 standard, which bundled 24 of these voice channels together to create a 1.544 megabit per second connection. Meanwhile, Europe and most of the rest of the world adopted the E1 standard, giving them 30 voice channels plus 2 extra for overhead, which totaled 2.048 megabits per second. For literally decades, these were the absolute standard enterprise wide area network interfaces. All of this standardizing built what we call the PSTN, the Public Switched Telephone Network. But let's take a quick look under the hood here. The PSTN operates on something called circuit switching. That means when you make a call, a dedicated physical path is held exclusively for you. But honestly, that is profoundly wasteful for modern data, because the circuit stays wide open and consumes capacity even during absolute silence in the conversation. Plus, the network's invisible control plane uses an old protocol called Signaling System 7, or SS7. Because it was designed way before the modern internet, SS7 harbors some pretty serious legacy security flaws that can actually allow sophisticated attackers to intercept calls and even track user locations today. Which brings us to Section 3, Packet Switching and VoIP, breaking the circuit bottleneck. The sheer wastefulness of holding those circuits open during silence was the next great challenge. To handle bursty, dynamic internet data, we absolutely needed a new paradigm. So the crucial point here is understanding how we moved from rigid circuits to dynamic packets. Instead of establishing a dedicated lockdown 64 kbps circuit for an entire call, Voice over IP, or VoIP, changed the game. It digitized the voice, compressed it, and broke it down into dynamic data packets. These packets are then routed over the exact same shared infrastructure as your emails and your web browsing, using that statistical multiplexing we covered earlier. VoIP completely disrupted telecommunications history because it shifted voice away from specialized, dedicated hardware and moved it right onto shared data networks. And this disruption was highly visible in the workplace. The classic, bulky, incredibly expensive telephony hardware that used to sit humming in corporate IT closets was ripped out and replaced by the IP PBX. It was a total software revolution. Suddenly, complex call routing, voicemail systems, and corporate directories were simply software applications running on standard commodity servers, which, as we know, eventually shifted entirely into the cloud. But here's the catch. Routing real-time voice packets over wide area networks required way better traffic engineering than the standard best-effort internet could provide. Enter MPLS, or multi-protocol label switching. Instead of a router stopping to do a deep, slow IP table lookup at every single hop along the path, MPLS basically attaches a short, fixed-length label to the packet. Think of it like a VIP FastPass. The interior network routers just swap these labels at lightning speed right in their hardware. This allowed enterprise networks to actually guarantee the quality of service needed so your important VoIP calls didn't just randomly drop while someone else in the office was downloading a massive file. All right, Section 4, Mobile and Optical Leaps, Unleashing Data and Light. Let's shift gears completely to the physical mediums that actually made our modern, hypermobile, massive bandwidth world possible, the cellular airwaves and the glass threads. When you trace the timeline of cellular generations, it really is a story of incredible, relentless iterative engineering. We started out with basic 1G commercial voice back in the late 70s and early 80s. Fast forward to the 2000s, and 3G, followed by 4G LTE, transformed those networks into all IP data platforms. Today, 5G New Radio has fundamentally redesigned how the radio access and core networks even interact with each other. And looking just over the horizon, 6G is going to push us into wild terahertz frequencies. So every single decade hasn't just been a bump in speed, it has fundamentally reimagined the entire architecture of connectivity. But listen, absolutely none of that wireless speed matters even a little bit without the wired backbone backing it up, optical fiber. And the physics here are just incredibly elegant. Fiber relies on a principle called total internal reflection. Because the microscopic glass core has a higher refractive index than the cladding that surrounds it, the light signal bounces perfectly inside the core. It can't escape. This allows massive, mind-boggling amounts of data to travel for tens of kilometers without needing a single amplifier, a staggering leap over those old, noisy copper wires. Now, bringing all these wireless and optical technologies together wasn't always a smooth ride. The transition to mobile voice over 4G was actually a massive bottleneck for a while. Early on, phones had to use a clunky workaround called circuit-switched fallback. If you wanted to make a voice call, your phone literally had to drop its fast 4G data connection, hunt around for an old 2G or 3G cell tower, and complete the call there. This caused super frustrating 3 to 8 second call setup delay. It wasn't until the full deployment of the IP Multimedia Subsystem, or IMS, that we finally got VoLTE and Wi-Fi calling. IMS unified that logical control layer we talked about, allowing seamless roaming between your home Wi-Fi and the cell towers without ever dropping the call. And finally, Section 5, Cloud, AI, and Tomorrow, the Convergence. This brings us to the final chapter of our explainer, where the physical telecommunications networks and the virtual cloud essentially become virtually indistinguishable from one another. Look at how aggressively these two worlds have collided. Today, hyperscale cloud providers like AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud are acting as massive network operators. And at the exact same time, traditional telecom carriers are basically becoming cloud providers. They aren't buying expensive, dedicated, rigid switching hardware anymore. Instead, they run virtualized network functions dynamically on elastic cloud resources. They can scale up instantly with network demand and spin right back down when it's quiet. The lines are totally blurred. For the IT professionals out there actually managing these massive beasts, the job has transformed entirely. Back in the legacy days, you used a vendor-specific element management system, or EMS. You were literally managing a specific piece of hardware in a complete operational silo. Today, modern management is technology agnostic. You're monitoring overall service quality across fiber, microwave, and 5G simultaneously from one pane of glass. And the future? It's all moving toward business management systems, or BMS. The focus is no longer just, is the server powered on, but rather, what is the user-centric experience right now? And are we actually meeting our service level agreement compliance? Which leads us perfectly to this quote from the Virtualization Options tutorial. It says, "The networks of the coming decade will be autonomous, capable of perceiving their own state, and executing complex management actions without human intervention." Folks, this isn't science fiction anymore. It is the most transformative shift happening in the industry right now. Networks are actively moving from being human-operated to AI-operated, capable of predicting their own outages and dynamically reconfiguring themselves on the fly. And so, I'll leave you with this final provocative thought. We have moved from simple Morse code pulses on a thin copper wire to a global, incredibly intelligent, programmable nervous system. As this infrastructure becomes the critical foundation for literally everything on the planet, are we truly ready to surrender the controls to AI? It's a fascinating question, and for sure, it's one every single IT professional is going to be grappling with over the next decade. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep learning.